In this mini lesson, we're going to talk about reflexive verbs and how to conjugate them in the present tense. Have you ever find yourself dealing with verbs like lavarsi, alzarsi, svegliarsi? I'm sure you did. What kind of verbs are these? We know that Italian verbs can be divided in three groups when we look at their infinitive form. We have thus verbs ending in are, verbs ending in ere, and verbs ending in ire. But here we have lavarsi, so why do we have that si as the ending of this verb? Don't panic. Let's take lavarsi. Does this verb remind you of any other verbs? It does, right? It reminds you of the verb lavare. That means to wash. Lavarsi is just the reflexive form of the verb lavare. Reflexive means that the action expressed by the verb somehow reflects or mirrors on the subject who is doing the action. The action is, in other words, performed upon the same subject or the same person who is performing it. If lavare means to wash, where we have a subject washing an object, lavarsi means to wash oneself, where we have the subject washing itself. Let's take another reflexive verb in its infinitive form, vestirsi. It reminds us of the regular verb vestire, that means to dress. The verb vestirsi is indeed the reflexive form of the verb vestire, and it means to dress oneself. In the case of vestirsi, the action of getting dressed does not affect an object, as in the first case of the verb vestire, but instead, if we use vestirsi, the action of getting dressed will be mirrored on the subject. If I am the subject, then I will be the person who is dressing myself. Now that we understood what is a reflexive verb, let's talk about how to conjugate it. Let's take again the infinitive of the three different reflexive verbs like lavarsi, alzarsi, and vestirsi. To which infinitive group do they belong? To the first ending in are, the second ending in ere, or the third ending in ire? The presence of the ending si could create some confusion. So just for a moment, let's forget about the fact that they are reflexing and let's leave out the si and let's treat this verb as normal regular verbs. Leaving out the si for a moment, we will thus have lavare, and we can see clearly now that this verb belongs to the first group. Then we'll have alzare, again first group, and vestire, third group. It's now easier to understand how to conjugate these verbs in the present tense. We just have to follow the rules to conjugate any other regular verbs belonging to that group. So, for instance, alzarsi belongs to the first group of verbs ending in are. So, when conjugating it, we will have io alzo, tu alzi, lui, lei alza, noi alziamo, voi alzate, loro alzano, as any other verbs of the first group ending in are. If we just leave it like this, though, we have merely conjugated the verb alzare, that means to lift. Io alzo means I lift, as in the following example. Io alzo la borsa pesante. I lift the heavy bag. But the verb alzarsi conveys the meaning of lifting oneself. In order to convey the concept expressed by the sentence I lift myself, we need to add an element when conjugating the verb alzarsi, and this element is a pronoun. We would thus have io mi alzo, where mi is the reflexive pronoun that means myself. Where does the reflexive pronoun me come from? At the beginning of our exercise, we had the verb in the infinitive alzarsi. We decided to leave aside for a moment the si of the infinitive to better understand to which group this verb belonged. We found out that we could conjugate it as all the other regular verbs belonging to the first group ending in are. The si of the infinitive form is a reflexive pronoun that needs to be declined according to the subject who is doing the action. When we conjugate the infinitive form lavarsi, we will have io mi lavo, tu ti lavi, lui o lei si lava, noi ci laviamo, voi vi lavate, loro si lavano. So remember, reflexive verbs are conjugated in the present tense following the rules of their basic form. But in order to convey the idea that the action mirrors on the subject who is doing it, we have to remember to put the reflexive pronoun between subject and the verb conjugated.